Welcome back again. All right, so let's continue down this world of algebra. All right, let's do it. All right, so share screen, boom. Yeah, man. All right, so this is where we left off last time, and so we're gonna kind of continue, right? We're gonna keep on layering on the difficulty, all right? Now, let's kind of talk through something like this. 3x equals to, no, I don't like that one. Actually, let's do, let me see if we can pull up this guy. I think to make it y equals to 2x plus 5, right? So right now, currently, y is the subject of our formula. The reason how you know that? Well, y is by himself, and he's leading the formula, right? And so suppose I said, I want you to make x the subject of the formula, right? And so we have to talk through step by step what we're going to do. First, let's identify where is x. Is he on the left-hand side or is he on the right-hand side? We know that he's on the right-hand side, right? And then now we have to talk through, well, what are the things that we want to remove? And so remember what making something the subject of the formula means, right? It means you're isolating for that variable. So we're now saying we don't want y to be the leader. We want x to be the leader, right? So we have to think about, well, what do we have to get rid of? Now, I see a 2 here. We have to get rid of him because we want x to be by himself leading the formula. We need to get rid of this 5 also, right? So the two things, or the two objects, or two numbers we need one to get rid of, right? Now, let's go through it step by step, okay? Now, let's go through what we're going to do first, right? Now, we're going to step through, we want to get rid of this 5. This 5 is adding. So we have to do the opposite to get rid of him. We have to subtract 5 to get rid of him. What you do to one side, meaning the right-hand side, you have to do to the left-hand side also. So I have to subtract 5, all right? Now, remember what this is now. Y minus 5 is going to equal to 2x, okay? I cannot combine y with 5, okay? So I have to just keep them separate. It's just like one is apples and one is oranges. You can't subtract both of them, okay? Now, the next thing now, I ask myself the same question again. What am I trying to do? Isolate for x. Well, where's x on the right-hand side? What's there that you don't want? Because you want x to be equal to something, that 2. Now, remember we talked about this last time. When something is kind of clamped together and you don't see any add or subtract sign, they're typically multiplying. So what's the opposite of multiplying? I got to divide by 2 to get rid of that 2. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other, all right? Now, be careful here. Remember that you're saying that you're dividing everything on the left-hand side by 2. Okay, so if you notice, now I've created an expression where now x is the leader, all right? And that is you making x the subject of the equation, all right? Now, let's go through some questions that I know probably some kids might have, right? Why did I subtract 5 first? Why was that my first step, right? I think that's a very valid point, a valid question. Now, there's a particular reason why I chose that as my first step. So let's kind of discuss that, right? Now, and if you said to yourself, so the two things we have identified that we need to get rid of is the 2 and the 5, right? If you said to yourself, I want to get rid of the 2 first, nothing is wrong with that. That's totally valid. Now, what is the 2 doing? It's multiplying. That's why it's married to the x. How do I get rid of a multiply? I have to divide by 2, right? Now, I want you guys to be careful here. I've seen a lot of times where students do this step, and then they divide the y by 2, and then they move on. But you have to remember one thing about when you do this divide by 2. Everything got to get divided by 2, not just what you want it to be. So this 5 has to get divided by 2 also. Okay, so that will then leave me with y over 2 equals to x, because I removed the 2, plus 5 over 2. What do you notice about that step? you have created fractions. This guy's a fraction here. This guy's a fraction here. And my question I always pose to my students is, do you like fractions? If you don't, then you won't do this type of step, okay? Because once you create fractions now you have to kind of go through fraction subtraction and fraction addition. And if you're not comfortable with that, then I would ask you to get rid of the adds and subtracts first, like what we did in the approach number 1, and then do the division last, all right? I'm going to finish this up though, right? We ask ourselves the same thing. We want to isolate x by himself. What is preventing us from having x by himself? This 5/2. This is just a number. And this number is adding. So how do I get rid of this number? I'm going to then subtract 5/2. That would get rid of that number. Then what I do to one side, I have to subtract on the other end. Minus 5/2. So now I have y/2 minus 5/2 equals to x. Now, if you're thinking in your head, Sean, this don't look like the first approach, then this is what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with fractions, then do not go this way, right? The bases are the same. So the base is going to come back, and then you're going to subtract the tops, y minus 5/2. And you notice I get the same thing as I got in the first approach, all right? How do I know that this is true? If I gave you this, 8/2, subtract 4/2, right? The bases are the same. Once the bases are the same with fractions, you're just going to do, if it's an add, you're just going to add the tops. If it's a subtract, you're just going to subtract the tops, okay? So it's going to be 8 minus 4/2, which is 4/4. Oh, there we go, 4/2, which is then 2, okay? So feel free to kind of give me comments if you want me to make videos on fractions, right? So if you have 1/3 plus 4/3, the bases are the same. So then you just add the tops. 1 plus 4/3 equals to 5/3. All right. So a quick little revision on that. So the takeaway here, though, we have made x the leader of our fraction of our equation. Sorry. All right. And so that's the whole point of changing the subject of an equation. All right. Now, let's do a time check. I think I got time for one more. Let me see if I can do the one from the actual assessment. So y equals x/5 plus 3p, right? So y equals to x/5 plus 3p. Now, who's the leader right now? Y is leading our equation. Now, they're asking you, can you make x lead the equation? So we got to do some work, all right? So we ask ourselves once again, where's x? X is on the right-hand side. What's there that I don't want? I don't want this 5. I don't want this 3p, okay? Now, based on what I just said or shared, okay? If you do the fractional parts first, you're just gonna, well, this one you won't be working with fractions in this one because you're doing the opposite, right? You're going to be removing the 5 by multiplying by 5, right? But I'm going to kind of show you the ideal way. So I'm going to get rid of the adds and the subtracts first, all right? So if I want to get rid of this 3p, this 3p is an object by himself. He is adding. So I'm going to get rid of the 3p by doing the opposite, subtract 3p, okay? And that gets rid of him. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So y minus 3p equals to x/5. Then I ask myself, once again, the same question. I want x by himself. I notice that there's a divide by 5. How you get rid of a divide by 5? What's the opposite of divide? You have to then multiply by 5, right? To get rid of that 5, yeah? So then x is going to be equal to, what you got to do to one side, you got to do to the other. So it's going to be 5 times whatever you had on the other side. And I made x now the leader, right? And so hence, you just made x the subject of the equation. All right, I hope that helps. Feel free to drop some comments down below. Give me some feedback so I know how to adapt and adjust for you. All right, that's kind of the whole brand of what I do. I adapt for my students. All right.